You're absolutely correct. We are in the midst of two pandemics, as you point out, COVID, and the other is social inequities, both of which have a very big impact on our mental health. In fact, I refer to the COVID pandemic as perhaps the greatest psychological experiment that has ever been done on humans in our lifetimes. It's the first time that 8 billion people and 1.3 billion children have been issued stay-at-home orders. As you point out, over 100 million people have lost jobs, maybe even more than that. And there's countless people who have suffered health issues and loss of loved ones. And many people have not even been able to be at funerals when their loved ones have passed away. But at the same time, there's a lot that is unknown. Yes, there is the possibility of a mental health tsunami, but we also have to be cautious that we don't yet know what the scope and size of that will be. There are conflicting opinions still as to whether it'll be a mental health tsunami or a ripple, because humans have a tendency to adjust to transient stressors, and it depends on how long the COVID pandemic is going to last and how many waves there are going to be and how well we respond to these pandemics. Now, I think there are some lessons we can learn from our infectious disease colleagues. When we talk about COVID, everyone is now familiar with the term, we need to flatten the curve. And what we are talking about that is to take proactive measures, social distancing, wear a mask, contact tracing. So I think we need to think about our mental health in much the same way. And I think Sadhguru has referred to this elegantly in many of his talks. It's not about being reactive. Currently, society is reactive when it comes to mental health. We need to be proactive and predictive. So what do I mean by that? By proactive, we need to build resilience, inner resilience. We need to build social and emotional strengths through our networks. We need to build the way we react to stressors. And we also need to build our immune resilience. And all of these are tied together. And I will get into that. And the second thing, when I say predictive, what do we do with COVID? I think right now the focus, we need to test more people. We need to catch them early before they become really ill. We need to sort of make sure they get the best possible care. We still don't do that in mental health. There's an acute shortage of psychiatrists, of counselors, even in the richest countries around the world. In the US, 77% of all counties lack psychiatrists. And the child psychiatry shortage, as Dr. Appar Reddy will point out, is even more acute. So could we use digital tools? Could we train lay workers? Could we come up with other solutions that can sort of replace this sort of the unmet need in the system for qualified professionals? And how do we build the capacity? So fighting COVID at the infectious disease level is all about building capacity. How can we build the capacity at the mental health level? And I'm going to talk a little bit about how technology tools, especially smartphones, smartwatches, may be very helpful for early detection when we don't have other tools to help people. So let me get back to the first one. How do we build resilience? So we know, I'm just going to talk about immunity first, because we all know that stress is linked to cortisol or stress hormones. And we know that when stress hormones go up, it depresses your immunity. People don't realize that there could be a direct connection between stress, immune function, and our human behavior, which is the third piece. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. There are some very interesting studies that have come out where they injected people with a very low level of a toxin to induce low levels of inflammation, much like what COVID might do in people who are asymptomatic or very mildly infectious. And then they did fMRI scanning of their brains to see how their brains react to familiar and unfamiliar faces. And what they found was that if you don't have low level of inflammation, then you recognized your friends as friends and you responded to familiar people in nice, comfortable ways. But if you had marginally elevated levels of inflammation in your body, you saw familiar people as threats. You were much more likely to be divisive, much more likely to recognize friends as not being friends. So there is a way that low levels of stress and inflammation affect not just our physical health, but the way we interact with people around us. And is there a way to break this cycle? Because stress can induce either a positive cycle or a negative cycle. The positive cycle of stress is, yes, inflammation. It sort of makes you divisive. It has damaging health effects on your heart, on your brain, on your cognition, on your sleep. Uncertainty breeds anxiety. But on the other hand, if you can defeat that, then you lead to a positive cycle where you're able to cope with stress and you're able to cope with uncertainty, because uncertainty is one of the things that our brains are most vulnerable to. And that is something I would love to get Sadhguru's opinion on. Why is the human brain so vulnerable to uncertainty? Why does it breed anxiety? You know, it's almost like the favorite of a horror story writer. They love uncertainty. They love building up the tension so that it drives you crazy. And that is exactly what the COVID virus is doing, because we don't have good solutions. It's infecting our minds. And so how can we overcome that? And that is one area. Now, I know that a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the International Yoga Day. And I know that, Sadhguru spoke at the event. Now, yoga and meditative practices actually are an amazing tool to build resilience, both at the emotional level and at the immune level. Many of us don't think of yoga and meditative practices as a tool to boost immunity. There was a recent study that came out where they reviewed 15 published trials of meditative practices and yoga, and they showed that they boosted protective chemicals that are anti-inflammatory, and they reduced levels of pro-inflammatory chemicals that we call as cytokines. And within 1 hour of starting yoga practices, 111 genes were changed. The expression of 111 genes, many related to immune function and inflammatory functions, were changed. And for 1 week, just 1 week of practice, produced noticeable benefits. People think you have to practice 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to produce big changes. No, you can see short-term, immediate effects within even a week of practice. And the first generation of yoga studies on mental health were not that well done. They were not high quality trials. They were small. They were not adequate controls. But now we have come to the second generation of yoga studies on mental health, and some of which we led and some of which others have led. There are over 100 good quality randomized controlled trials. These are the highest quality trials involving more than 100,000 participants in cumulative across all these studies. The biggest effects that you see with yoga are on stress, depression, anxiety, sleep, even some types of cognitive improvements. And in many of these studies, yoga was better than a waitlist control or no treatment. And in some of these studies, yoga was as good as a prescription medication for milder forms of mental illness. So clearly now, I think we have robust accumulating evidence that yes, yoga can help treat people with milder forms of mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, sleep. And the last point I want to make is in terms of neuroplasticity, and again, I think David is also perhaps going to touch on this. There are now emerging studies showing that yoga has both structural and functional effects on brain circuits and brain regions. So one of the areas that's of interest to me is the aging brain. We know that as our brain ages, there is shrinkage of various regions in the brain, especially the memory centers, the frontal lobes that are responsible for executive decision-making, which is so important during times of uncertainty. And experienced yoga practitioners have less age-related shrinkage of these critical brain regions, again, suggesting that there are potential neuroplastic effects of yoga on our brain. So I'm going to stop there with that. And I really look forward. I mean, I would love to get, Sadhguru's opinion on, there's so many types of yoga and meditative practices. Are there specific types of practices that you think might help us with immunity? Of course, I'm not saying that yoga is a cure for COVID or a replacement for a vaccine, but to boost baseline immune function and baseline resilience, are there specific types of yoga practices that you think are particularly strong for that?
See, what I have to say may sound a bit tangential, though various things that you've said is very true, but you're speaking a certain language. The language is considered scientific, but please pardon me if I say something which is not right, because you must understand I'm not educated, so I speak the way I speak, okay? So, see, we are trying to have a keyhole vision of everything. We are looking at bits and bits, inflammatory markers, the chemical changes, neuroplasticity. The yogic sciences don't look at things like this. We look at the human being as an entirety. What happens in my little finger inevitably happens in my brain, all right? What happens in every cell in my body inevitably happens in my brain. First of all, in any of the yogic texts or any of the yogic lore, there is no mention of brain. So, what do you do with somebody like me who doesn't have a brain, who just has a turban, all right? So what do you do with me? Because we do not recognize brain as a very significant part of human ecology. We see mind means we say manomaya kosha, which means the entire body is a mind of its own. There is one layer of body which is doing mental functions on various levels. This I would say, a very skewed level of significance to the brain has essentially come because cultures which recognize human thought as the highest possibility in human life, these kind of conclusions have come because societies were so dogmatic that they wouldn't allow you to think straight. They wouldn't allow you to think for yourself because somebody up there will think for you. So when they broke away from that and people started thinking for themselves, they felt so much kind of liberated from the dogmatic existence that they had, they started giving unnecessary levels of significance to human thought and emotion. In the yogic sciences, we don't pay heed to your thought process because we see your thought process as just recycling of the little data that you have. But what's happening in every cell in the body is a phenomenally more complex mechanism, phenomenally more complex activity than what is happening in terms of, thought and emotion circulating in your head. So, in terms of memory and in terms of intelligence, both ways, every cell in your body carries more memory than you can ever carry in your brain and more intelligence in terms of sophisticated and complicated activities that every cell in the body is doing. So, having said that, so there is a mind across the body. As there is a physical body, there is a mental body, there's an energy body, there's an etheric body. So depending upon your access that you have found to these 4 or 5 different dimensions of bodies, or the alignment of these first 3 bodies, the physical, mental and energy body, your mental health is decided by how well aligned these 3 dimensions are. Your physical body, your mental body and your energy body, if they're properly aligned, this means only then you find access to the 4th dimension of the body, which for lack of English words we call it etheric, but it is actually called as Vijnanamaya Kosha. To explain Vijnan, 3 of you are from Indian background, so generally the word Vijnan is used as science. Vijnanam or Vijnana means science. Vijnan means Vishesh Gyan. That means that dimension of perception which you cannot have through your 5 senses. That means that dimension of perception that you cannot see, that you cannot hear, that you cannot smell and taste or touch, when you perceive that dimension, then we say it's Vijnan. So this is a dimension within you which is moving from physicality to a non-physical state. Because we see mind also as a physical thing. See, as if I wish, I can throw a thing at you. Similarly, I can throw a thought at you. So we treat thought as a physical process, emotion as a physical process. Because thought and emotion have a physical existence. Now that you can measure it on whatever kind of instruments you guys have, Obviously, it's physical. When you can measure something on a physical parameters, physical instrument, obviously it subscribes to physical parameters and it is a physical thing. Mind is physical because it has a chemical and electrical background to it. So, we don't see mind as a separate mechanism, brain as a separate mechanism. The neurological system, as all of us know, is right across the body, and everything that happens in every cell of this system has an impact on our mental health. First of all, what is mental health? Right now, I'm sorry if I say something abrasive, please pardon me, I'm not intending to offend anybody, but for me it sounds ridiculous that people are going about making being stressful, being anxious as normal things. It is not normal. When you were a 5-year-old child, joy was normal, isn't it? When did it so happen that stress became normal, tension became normal, anxiety became normal, being depressed became normal? Slowly this is a new normal we're establishing. This new normal is completely away or deviant from the natural existence of a human being. So essentially, let me put it in my own experience because I am neither qualified in scriptures nor in modern science. All I know is, I know this piece of life absolutely, from its origin to its ultimate, and that's all I know. I'm speaking from this context. It so happened one day I suddenly realized that if I don't mess with my mind, I'm always ecstatic. I'm just dripping ecstasy simply because I don't put my hand into my mind. So once I realized that, I really thought, this is it. I was 25 years of age at that time. On that day, after a few weeks of experimenting with it, and I saw every time I just don't touch my mind, I'm just overflowing with ecstasy, then I made up my mind. I made a plan for the world. On that day, the population was about 5.6 billion people. I made a plan that in 2.5 years' time, I will make the entire population ecstatic. I thought I have discovered something. Well, it's only later I realized in the tradition there is so much talk about it. Till then I had no clue about any tradition, all I knew was I have hit a gold mine. If I just take my hand off my mind, I'm just bursting with ecstasy. I actually sat down and made a plan. In 2.5 years, I will make the entire world ecstatic. Who wouldn't want it, I thought. Now nearly 40 years, look at me. We have touched a few million people, but that is not the entire population. But it slowly I discovered people are so invested in their miseries. Initially I thought, who would not want to be ecstatic? But people are so invested in their miseries, they are not going to give it up because they have been socially taught misery will produce results. They think anger will produce results, anxiety will produce results. A whole lot of people are writing books how you can use the energy of anxiety into a creative process, energy of anger into a creative process, resentment into a creative process. All the best for you. If you want to do everything from an unpleasant source within you, all the best. Fundamentally, if you really look at yourself, you are neither joyful, nor painful, nor miserable, nor anything. You can make yourself anything you wish. It is just that human beings have given up this choice as if they have chosen to go back in the evolutionary process. The significance of being human is just this. See, this is the only creature that you refer to as a being. You don't call a tiger a being, an elephant a being, an ant a being, because they are all creatures of compulsive, instinctual reactions. This is the only one which is capable of a conscious response to everything that happens within and outside of us. So this knows how to be. That is the reason why we have called this a being. But how far away from that have we gone? Humans know how to be, they are the only ones who don't know how to be. It looks like the other creatures know. A rat knows how to be a good rat, a tiger knows how to be a good tiger. A human being doesn't know how to be a wonderful human being. This is the only problem you're facing. Actually, there is only one problem on this planet, human being. Have you seen any other problem, I'm asking? Nobody has come to you with any trouble, isn't it? This is the only trouble, human being. Our problem essentially, how I see it is, see, I've said this in many different ways, but in the evolutionary process, from a goat to a giraffe, from a pig to a rhinoceros, something like this, it was taken millions of years. But anthropologists say that from a monkey to a man, it happened rather too quickly. So quickly they have been looking for a missing link which they have not found yet. So in a way, as all of you know, the DNA difference between a chimpanzee and us is only 1.23%. 1.23% is not much of a difference. So physiologically, we are that close to a monkey. But in terms of our intelligence and awareness, we are worlds apart from a monkey. So in many ways, our problem is just this, we have not learned to handle our own intelligence. You can give it any number of names, you can call it tension, anxiety, stress, depression, this, that, whatever. Essentially, our intelligence has turned against us. Why would our own intelligence turn against us? Somewhere we don't know how to handle it. We do not know how to manage our own intelligence. As all of you know, those of you who are working, all three of you who are working in these areas, Bala will give anesthetic, but you guys know if we remove half our brain, everybody will be peaceful. Yes or no? Right now, being peaceful seems to be such a big challenge. If you take away the possibility of being human, peace will happen, no problem. So today people are going about talking as if being peaceful is the highest goal in your life. Well, if you remove half your brain, you will be peaceful. An earthworm is peaceful, nothing wrong with him. He's a wonderful creature, he's even eco-friendly, which you're struggling to be. So, what I'm saying is, essentially human problem is, human faculties are so many and so profound that human societies have not invested in learning to handle our own faculties. If your thought and emotion happen just the way you want, would there be any of these problems, I'm asking? Forget about the other dimensions of life, just thought and emotion. You know how to make it happen. Your thought happens the way you want, your emotion happens the way you want. Is there any psychological issue, I'm asking? Reddy Garu is talking about intellectual, lack of development, or what's it called, I'm sorry? Intellectual disability, is that right?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Intellectual disability. Well, if we compare ourselves to each other, each one of us are intellectually disabled in some way, isn't it so? Is there any two individuals who are exactly same level of intellectual capability? It is not so. It is only in a schoolroom, unfortunately, we are trying to put every child through the same extruder of intellectual competence, which is destroying human beings in so many different ways. But every one of us is intellectually disabled compared to somebody else, isn't it? Each one of us, at least me. You guys are too educated, you cannot say that. At least me, I know intellectually what you're capable of, what somebody is capable. If you look at it, what a child can do, many things you cannot do. This is the reality of our life. So, if we want to grade human beings like this, I think it's an unfortunate process. We are grading human beings, who is fit to live, who is not fit to live. I heard that even in many states there are laws whether these intellectually disabled people should get a ventilator or not if they get infection, the virus infection. That's a terrible decision to make. But maybe they have to make a decision on some basis, they have chosen to make it like this, very, very unfortunate. But that's the reality of our existence. I'm saying grading human beings like this is not necessary, because I have done this with hundreds of people or thousands of people around me, that Intellectually, they were graded as very low. Most of the people who come to me are school dropouts, all right? People who are qualified will all go somewhere else. But within 6 months to 1 year, they will start doing things with me. They are managing one of the, major organization. In absolute efficiency, if you come and see our events, our centers, how they're managed, anybody from any major corporations, if they come, they see we are better managed than them. But we don't have any MBA qualified people. We don't have Harvard Business School people coming and working with us. No such thing. All intellectually disabled people only I have in some way. That's the kind of people I draw, it looks like. But they will do a fantastic job because intelligence is not just in the intellect. Intellect is just one aspect of our intelligence. We have given too much significance to it simply because of the type of school education we have created, which is purely intellectual. There is no room for other dimensions of intelligence within you to function. Because of this, we will have to grade human beings. I'm asking, do you believe an ant is stupid? Hello? He's very, very smart with his life. He just knows what to do. I wish a lot of human beings, if they were as clear about their life as the ants are, there wouldn't be any psychiatric problems. Really. I don't think they have a clinic to treat them because they just know what to do. But they are more pre-programmed. Our problem is nature gave us little freedom and we're messing it up. What humanity is suffering is not its bondage. Humanity is suffering its freedom, unfortunately. If you want to exercise this freedom in a positive way, it's important that as a society, not only as individual human beings, as a society, we have to invest towards how to harness human faculties, which are so many and so profound compared to any other creature on this planet. There is absolutely no focus on that in our education systems. We are focused on how to conquer the world, how to conquer the galaxies, but we are not focused on how to take charge of our own faculties. So now you are seeing, it is not because of the virus that this is happening. This is happening, virus might have stimulated a little more problems, but half the people who are driving on the street are in some states of misery, that's what I see. You just stand in any major city, in any part of the world, and see they're all driving their dream machines, all right? When I say dream machines, what your parents could not afford, what your grandparents could not afford, you're wearing, you're driving and you're living in those kind of homes. But tell me how many people on the street are driving their dream machines joyfully? Hardly any. So all of them are sick in my opinion. They may not come to the clinic, but anybody who does not know how to be pleasant within himself or herself, it is not even about being pleasant to somebody, being pleasant in your experience of life, in some way a sickness has set in. Whether you are going to diagnose them or not, whether you are going to medicate them or not, that's a questionable thing, that is decided by the doctors, that's fine, but anybody who is walking around joylessly is obviously a sick person. You want it to become a clinical diagnosis, only then you think they are sick, no. The first roots of sickness are already there. It's like if a tree is standing, if the leaves dry up, we know the tree is getting sick. We don't have to wait till the trunk dries up to know that it's sick. Leaves are beginning to go brown, dry up in the wrong season, then we know this plant is suffering in some way. So, when you were a child, your face was like this and now it's becoming like this, that means you're sick. No, people say, this is because of my profession, then don't do it, get fired. No, this is because of family, then why did you build a family? Be alone. No, because you're alone you suffer, because you have family you suffer, you don't have a job you suffer, you got a job you suffer, you're poor you suffer, you're rich you suffer. Tell me one place where human beings are not suffering. Suffering means sickness, it is. Suffering is a consequence of sickness. Suffering is a surface, there is a deeper sickness within. So, the word dis-ease is a very good word. There is no ease in you, so you are in a state of dis-ease. Whether it's physiological or psychological manifestation, how it's manifested depends on various, genetic and other tendencies, and also sociological, channels that people are creating for you. You will see in certain societies, everybody chooses to get sick in a certain way because it is also a trend, it is a fashion. This will get me a lot of flack, I know, because there is a depression squad in India who are always after me because I said, whether you're depressed or not is a choice. Right now, you might have given up that choice, you might have lost that choice, you may not know how to take charge of this choice, but somewhere deep inside, it's a choice to be healthy or to be sick. If you know how to make that choice, you can be out of it. They've been after me for 3 years, he says depression is a choice, depression happens because of this, that. I'm saying the type of chemistry that you carry itself is by choice. What kind of genetics you got from your parents may not be your choice, and it is not. But how you make the genetics that you have work within yourself is still your choice. As you were just saying, some 111 genes will behave in a certain way with yogic practices, I will tell you, every one of your gene expression can be changed. Every aspect of your genetics can be changed to function in the way that you want, the way it is best for this life. You can make that happen if only if it's approached properly, because the word yoga is being used in a very minimalistic way. Twisting, turning in a yoga studio is considered yoga. But genuinely, if you come to a state of yoga, which means you have become a perforated life in the sense, when I say perforated life, see there are 2 holes in this nose. Suppose you really make yourself really solid, you will be dead, that's the only way you can be. It's perforated. Only because it's in transaction with the rest of the existence, this is alive in terms of food, in terms of water, even in terms of, elemental stuff, and even in terms of atomic and subatomic particles, it is in transaction. This is existing in transaction. As all of you know, the microbes and stuff, it's a huge transaction going on. This is a life transaction. You are not an individual like some kind of a concrete ball. You are not that. Unfortunately, one fundamental reason why there is mental health issues in the world on the scale that it is human beings have taken their individual nature too seriously. They don't have an experience of being a constant transactional process. What is you today is not you tomorrow. What was not you yesterday is you today, just in terms of food that you eat, forget about the experiences and impressions. So, this taking individual nature too seriously is the basis of all the struggles that human beings are going through. Yoga means union, that means the individual nature and what is called as a universal process, in some way, if not absolutely united, at least perforated in your experience. You know that you are not all contained in this, not intellectually knowing, experientially you know. As Bala was quoting some studies some time ago, just watching your breath, so many people have changed their lives simply because it made you conscious of the perforated life that you are, not a concrete block of life that you are. So, those who think they are a complete individual by themselves, this whole trend of individualism is the basis of every psychological trouble that human beings are going through. Well, you might have genetic predispositions, that's a different matter, but even if you're predisposed, it does not mean you must manifest that. If you do the right things, you don't have to manifest that. If I've said something very abrasive, please pardon me, please.